my father worked at Boeing. I remember when I was a little boy, we'd come out and pick him up on second shift, and I'd hide in the back seat and try to scare him when he got in the car. But that was back in the days when the flight line at Boeing was really hopping. I mean, there were planes everywhere. They had tests going on. Planes were flying, at night. But they had, you could hear the engine test in the background, behind the hangars. It was just busy, busy, busy.
I thought it was kind of neat that when I was a little kid, I played in the Boeing baseball leagues and that. My dad was working there, and they used to have picnics for the families. I helped, demolition, the swimming pool and the parks when I first went to work there in the 70s. But I remember playing on that same ball fields, and they had a swimming pool open to Boeing employees and their families, and they had park areas where you go camping, that kind of stuff.
Well, it was, I think as a young family, we felt like we'd hit the jackpot. Working for Boeing was kind of the job to have in Wichita. Good benefits, good pay scale. It was a job that you could raise a family on. And we had been doing okay, and we'd been, struggling along as a young family does. But this gave us an opportunity to really, we thought, put money aside and really plan for the future and have some stability with that company. And, it was hard work, and it wasn't, I'm not sure Terry ever felt extremely gratified by the work, but it was a great paycheck, and it really allowed him to provide for his family. And I think that's how I viewed it at that time.
Well, first of all, we were right beside Boeing from 1966 until 17 years ago. And Boeing employees after work or on their lunch break would come and visit our store, shop, and we got real close relationships with a lot of Boeing employees to that time period, and some of those people a lot of them I still have relationships with. We've had customers from Boeing for 47 years.
There was also a lot of people that were hiring in that were multi-generation Boeing. Their parents, one or both had worked out there, or a cousin or a sister. So there was a lot of folks that kind of had a family feel about it too. That it was almost like a Boeing family, you'd say.
Boeing, they have many divisions, and I've been to several of those divisions, and they work like a big family. Even though you cross the program, you have military, you have commercial, but I feel everybody almost work towards the same goal.
Well, the way I looked at it was that I knew that I could see the lineage. There was a boss, and his son was a foreman, and his son had two cousins and a brother that worked on the line. So, you could see the hierarchy, how it worked. And so you either chose to buy into that and work that to your advantage, or you decided, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do my job and try to be good at it and let the chips fall where they may. And so that's the attitude I took, and a lot of other people took it as well. Yes, it was a family. There was no doubt about it. It just wasn't my family.
Around the strikes, it seems like when there's a strike, there's kind of a division with people who sympathize with the strikers and say, they are the ones who are fighting for wages, benefits, and the ones that say, well, it's the unions that are, getting our wages out of whack, and that's why companies can't be competitive. So there's a lot of back and forth, and even today, when I write about contract coverage or even Boeing leaving, there's this conversation when people leave comments on the online stories about it's the union's fault. No, we're the ones who are helping, keep wages and benefits in Wichita.
No, I've been through 4 strikes, and I've sat at the table on 2 of them, two strikes and 3 contracts, and I feel like that it was the right thing to do each time we did it. We had justification for what we wanted, and nobody likes to go backwards either, and sometimes the company wants you to go backwards. But no, I've not been in a situation where I think the strike was unnecessary.
It was tough. But when you work for justice in the workplace and try to make conditions, safety conditions, good in the workplace, you get benefits. It's not always about the salary. It's other issues in the workplace. But it was tough. I had 3 small children at the time. I've been through 2 strikes and long strikes, both in '89 and '95. And it's no fun. But you know what? I brought my kids onto the strike line with me and my wife, so they knew why Dad wasn't bringing home a check. So they knew what was going on. So it's just been something in my blood, that although nobody wins probably in a strike, is that, the result is hopefully you're going to, maybe not only have better benefits and salary, but, a safer workplace for everybody, kind of justice in the workplace. So, strikes are no fun, but something that you have to do from time to time.
You have a lot of people out in the city, maybe, or that don't think you deserve to make more money or have the benefits that you have, and they think you're overpaid, and they think people. You might have one person that'll go out and tell somebody in the community, "Hey, I work at Boeing and I don't do anything. I just, I sit there and sleep all day," and they think that everyone's like that. Well, I tell you, they can come out and try doing what I see a lot of people do out there. You just don't walk out off the street and do some of these jobs. I mean, and some of them are very, very stressful, but you do get paid well.
Because then, as we found out after the first layoff, and then the roller coaster began, that although, as I mentioned, to work at Boeing was like hitting the jackpot, the longer you were there, at least during the time that Terry worked for them, you really learned that you had to plan for these layoffs, and the ideology you had that this was going to be the great, stable manufacturing job that will provide for our family, we'll be able to buy a modest home, we'll be able to take vacations every once in a while, and just nothing extravagant, but kind of live the American dream. It wasn't exactly that. And that was very disconcerting and difficult to live through that cycle.
You could tell, people would come in and talk about it, and they, depending on how long they were laid off, some of them would get pretty bad off when they started losing their unemployment, and a lot of them were suffering.
I was laid off for about 7 months. I came back for about 3 months, got laid off. Then as I was coming home, I was putting the key in the door and my phone was ringing. I go in and answer the phone, it's Boeing. "Oh, well, we're sorry, we shouldn't have laid you off. We want you to come back." So, it was kind of, I was right on the edge where it just always teetered, and I was always worried about getting laid off.
Yes, I've basically been laid off 5 times in my lifetime of aircraft. It's first time is very disheartening. You plan on never going back to aircraft, but when they call you, there's nothing else out there in this part of the country that pays as well, or the benefits. It gets a little easier each time, but it's still a little unnerving, but it's not so bad each time. You kind of get used to it after a while.
At one point, I drove a school bus. I had a paper route, morning paper route I delivered. Just whatever I could do, because I knew I was going back because, it was just layoffs out there are part of that life. And so I knew it was going to end at some point. So.
Another interesting thing was that if you were a Boeing employee who was laid off and you went out into this Wichita market to find a job, people would not hire you because they would say, well, as soon as Boeing calls you back, you're going to be leaving us.
No, I was laid off one time and I spent 2.5 hours waiting to talk to a local convenience store chain. When they look at you and everything else, they see on your application you've worked aircraft, and a lot of times they would just, in fact, one time they just literally tore it in half and threw it in the trash and told me to leave. They didn't want anything to do with us.
And yeah, that could be difficult, but you learn to cut back. You learn to do without. I did my laundry and hung it out instead of putting it in the dryer. We cut back on the meals, what we had. You went to a little simpler meal, and, I think you kind of grow with doing something like that. You grow as a person and you have more compassion for other people.
Everybody points to one event that was a change in the way stuff was run. That was when the merger with McDonnell Douglas. I don't know. That was in '96, and some people have nothing good to say about that point. A lot of the McDonnell Douglas management came into the company, and I don't know if there was definitely a change in the direction. It's not that maybe the Boeing company wasn't going that direction anyway, but it was almost like McDonnell Douglas folks accelerated it a little bit. And we started hearing a lot of stuff about we're a team, we're not a family.
Seattle treated us like, they had to give us work. They didn't. It was a little bit of it was a much different culture from Seattle to Wichita, very different. And we felt very appreciated for our work and our expertise, even though we had, even as Boeing, we were recognized nationally as some centers of excellence for the work we did.
It really took a nosedive, not only on the commercial side, but on the military side. The relations with management went down. Nobody trusted anyone. The trust was gone. And it makes for hard times in the workplace. You're not wanting to maybe produce as much as you were before because you have this feeling that you don't know if you can trust them. You don't know if you're going to have a job.
Yeah, it was a long time of, we knew we were going to get sold, but they never gave us any information of who was buying us, what was going to happen. So there were several months of, I don't know what's going to happen, what's going on.
June of 2005.
Well,
very, very tough, very rough. When Onyx bought them, a lot of people didn't get job offers to go to work for the new company. A lot of long-term people, which was very tough. That hit home, and it tore your heart to see people that had been there that long that didn't get offers in the company that they worked for many years.
Very difficult time. I had friends that were not offered a job. Do you know how that went down here? The divestiture, they kind of split. Oliver was the split. That was where the line was drawn. Everything west of Oliver was commercial. Everything east of Oliver was military. Military remained Boeing. Commercial went with Onyx and then Spirit. They call it Spirit.
It was a Saturday. Didn't come in the mail. I kind of anticipated, I shouldn't have, but I kind of anticipated that I wasn't going to be kept on. Now, they had 2 or 3 different ways that they could have kept me. I'll explain that to you if you want to hear it. But Saturday morning, I woke up. Again, as I told you, I'd lost my wife about in April, and this was May. I heard the doorbell, ran outside because I knew what was going to happen. After all, I was in on some of the planning of it. Ran outside, saw this truck driving away, and saw this package on my step. I knew what it said even before I opened it. You know? So, thank you for your 16 years. We don't need you anymore.
They told us the process was basically Friday. If you got a letter in the mail on Saturday, it was good. But if DHL showed up at your door, it was a bad thing, because that was the new company doesn't want you.
When those people went home that weekend, they didn't know if they was going to have a job to come back to. Everybody was waiting for the DHL trucks at their house because that's where they were getting the notice that you weren't coming back. I thought that was a very sad moment in the history of Boeing.
The way they did it was underhanded and shady. They would not allow you back on the premises to collect your belongings. They locked you out. I was called, about a week, and it's been 6-7 years now. I was called a week later to come over to security and pick up my boxes of personal goods. And when I got there, they just tossed them outside. So here you go.
People that were employed in 2005 were the very same people that worked at Boeing in 1996 when they delivered a record number of aircraft. First year that Boeing had ever delivered 600 plus aircraft in a single year. It's hard to convince me that those people didn't know their job. I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you that some weren't the best, but they knew what their job was and they did their job and did them well.
You know, it was always there. And the rumor was always there. Well, Boeing military, it's going to sell out. You know, they're going to sell out, and this is going on ever since the divestiture. And then finally it happens. They didn't sell out, but they sure sold the people out.